Hello, guys, and welcome to my channel, Beautifully Broken. How are you doing and how is your day going? We're here again to talk on a particular topic called my inner self. Welcome back again to my channel. My name is Chidinma, and today we're going to be talking about a topic I call my inner self. Like I said earlier, I am one who is also on the journey of healing, and it's a tremendous journey that I would want us as a community to be a part of. In my last series, I talked about a topic saying no one to blame. Here, I explained why it is important for us to take the blame away from our abusers and those who did us wrong and take on the responsibility of walking ourselves towards the path of healing, towards the path of being, and towards the path of being the best version of ourselves. Now, we've taken the blame away from them. We have denied them the authority and the power to continually be a determinant factor to how we behave, to how we interact, to how we think, and to how we go about our daily lives. Now, the responsibility is to us. What's next? What are we to do? How do we pilot this journey towards healing? Now, I believe that the most important thing we need to ask ourselves in this phase is, who am I? Who am I internally? What is going on in my world inside? What is really happening inside of me? Who really am I? What's chemicals and hormones are really functioning inside of me at this moment? There is a course I am presently taking, and there was something he says. It says that 10% of the story we experience is via what we see. 90% of it comes from our perception and our past experience. So, what does it mean? That our interpretation of things are 90% based on our internal life, and 10% are based on what we see. For example, probably someone who has gone through a traumatic experience can see something and immediately target as something awful, something so, and someone else will see the same thing and target as something beautiful. Let's assume so many of us are lovers of dogs. Assuming that at a particular point in your time in your life, you were really chased after by a dog because of something, and it left a certain sense of trauma inside of you, that immediately you see a dog, the first thing that comes to your mind is to avoid the dog. Just the experience. 10% is what you've seen the dog. The 90% is you remember the feelings you experienced when you were chased by a dog, and your automatic reaction could be either to avoid the dog or to put yourself in a fight mode or a flight mode. Whereas someone else who has experienced a very beautiful relationship with a dog, you know, cuddling and playing and everything. When he or she sees the dog, the first thing that comes to his mind, oh, what a lovely dog. And you see the reaction would be going forward to the dog, probably to pet the dog, to touch the dog, and to play with the dog. So you see that 10% of the perception of their story is based on what they've seen a dog. 90% is based on their perception and their past experience. So when it comes to the individual that has had a traumatic experience with a dog, the working begins from inside. You have to debunk the ideology, you have to heal your mind, you have to tell your mind that that was in the past, that was the experience that you had in the past, and this dog is not gonna chase after you. Now, in this story I just analyzed, the trigger for this individual's reaction is the dog. The dog in this situation is innocent, but just the sight of the dog reminds this individual of a traumatic experience he or she had with the dog in the past. Now, if you notice that this is something happening inside of this individual, and that brings us to the topic I said, my inner self, and why do I act the way I do? There's a book that I would recommend by Mr. Lahaya. If I'm pronouncing it well, I'm going to write the name of the author of this book. It says why you act the way you do. It talks more about temperaments and how our attitudes and reactions and everything to things comes, has a strong relationship with our temperament, which is very important. And I think we also will talk about how our temperament causes us to react at times to trauma. Some people are quite easy to snap out, some people takes a whole lot of time. It's kind of have a little role to play, or kind of a much more role to play with our personality traits. But now in this question, we ask ourselves, who are we in the inside? What is my personality trait after all? Am I a sanguine? Am I a melancholist? Am I a phlegmatic? Am I a choleric? It goes a long way to tell or determine how we react to situations. Now, a phlegmatic is more like kind of a little bit of a nonchalant person that maybe it's not going to hurt the person as much as it's going to hurt a melancholist who is quite very sensitive and quite a very deep thinker. And one thing about melancholy is the struggle mostly is with negative thoughts and fears, which is not really what a phlegmatic struggle with. So our personality trait also affects our trauma experiences and how we react to them. So the first question I will ask myself about my inner self is: will you understand your temperament, who your temperament, what blend you are? Are you a sang male, a mel sang, a flare choleric, whatever it's gonna be? Now, what are my triggers? Now, for you to know how to navigate an environment, you have to understand how the environment works, right? And when you understand how the environment works, then you can know how to be able to navigate the environment. So the thing I'm going to ask myself is, what are my triggers? What trigger these experiences? What trigger these attitudes? Like in the scenario of the dog, the person's trigger is just the sound of a dog. It triggers the memory of what happened in the past. And until the person understands that, okay, this is what triggers me, how am I going to work on this trigger? Some of us is just the mere, you know, thought or the mere word of someone saying, "Can you sit down?" It could be a trigger because probably all through the individual's life, this individual has always been told to sit down, what you're saying doesn't matter, your words are not counted, more like an emotional abuse. So just hearing the word sit down triggers an emotion in the person, and the person could try to like rebel. Why are you telling me to sit down? Why should I have to sit down? Who are you to tell me to sit down? Now the person is operating from the point of the past experience. Remember, 10% is what we see, and 90% is based on our perception and our past experiences. So now you sit down and say, why do I actually react when someone says sit down? Why do I actually react when someone says, oh, you're just being silly? Why do I react that way? There was a particular thing I was watching on YouTube. It talks about black and white thinking. People that have gone through trauma always, have this black and white thinking pattern. Is either this or that. Always at the extreme. They hardly have a balance. We hardly have a balance. So the black and white thinking is, she telling me to sit down, is she trying to abuse me? Not saying that probably she's just joking or she's just politely trying to tell me to sit down, courtesy, and all of that. So, what are my triggers? What scenarios do I find myself that causes me to react? Now, if you remember, when you put on all of these scenarios, you go back and sit down and say, why do they trigger me? Why really do they trigger me? Why do these words resurrect a certain kind of emotion inside of me? Why does it awaken a certain kind of feeling inside of me? What's going on? Why does this word tend to shake up something inside of me? Why is it triggering me? Now, when we have this deep introspection, we begin to understand our emotions and the feelings. Remember, the brain trying to protect us, and at times it causes us to act in a certain way without us knowing why. And that is why reflection is very important, especially when you are going through a healing process. Continually reflecting, why did I act this way? What triggered? Why was I triggered? I hope you understand where I'm driving on. And then that is it. So the triggers make you react in a certain way. Why is it so easy for people to crack silly jokes and they don't take it to heart? But when someone cracks such jokes to me, I react. What is triggering these emotions? What happened? Why? Now, the understanding of this is going to help you be more intentional in your healing journey. So when the reaction, when that emotion comes and says someone say, "Oh, don't be silly, sit down." When you would want to react, or when we want to react to like, "Why are you telling me to sit down? Why are you telling me to not be silly and sit down?" You remember that, okay, this is a trauma reaction happening. This is a flashback happening. So I have to control my emotions and smile. I'm like, why is it what like okay, and sit down. This is going to help us because remember we're trying to salvage ourselves and try to hold a healthy relationship. No one will want to stay around a toxic person. Funny enough, yes, we experience a toxic experience by abuse. We unfortunately or sadly, if I should use that word, carry some of this toxicity in us. And this is where healing comes into play because we are trying to shed out all of this toxicity that we have accumulated as a result of the toxic environment we found ourselves in. So the toxic um, um, personalities we're trying to shut up or toxic actions we're trying to shut up is these reactions we react towards things that seems to put us in similar situations to what we experienced in the past. So another thing is, I said this thing, how do I listen to my emotions? There's a book I read from a very lovely lady. Her name is Kate. It's talking about emotional intelligence. It makes us realize that emotions in itself is not the end thing. Emotions is just a pointer to a situation, a pointer to something. So why am I angry? The anger is not the problem. It's what is the anger pointing to? What is the joy pointing to? What is the sadness pointing to? What is the fear pointing to? So is the anger pointing to the fact that I was always talked down on, that each time I notice something of that nature or my brain senses something of that nature, the anger erupts as a form of defense? Or is the fear because probably when I was younger or at a particular point in my time, I was abused physically or sexually, that the thought of any sexual thing or any physical thing tends to erupt a sense of fear in me? What are my emotions telling me? What are my emotions telling me? Am I actually listening to my emotions? Or am I just saying, oh, I'm just an angry person, or I'm just fearful, or I'm just having this anxiety? What are these emotions telling you? They are more of a way of communication to you. What are they saying to me? Now, when we begin to listen to our emotions and try to understand where they are driving us and what they are trying to say to us, then we can begin to work on ourselves and say, okay, I am scared because I was sexually molested. So, any movie or anything that depicts any forms of sexuality just triggers that emotions. I have a sudden flashback that releases so many chemicals or so many hormones in my body in a sense of trying to defend. Probably might be through fight or flight or freeze or fawn. Probably I choose to fight back and maybe someone just touching my back reminds me of how I was sexually abused. I'm like, why don't you touch me like that? Or probably I just run away or just fawn to it. And there is this short clip I watched on I think it's YouTube or Facebook, I can't really remember, of someone, a child, the teacher said, "Oh, I love you." And immediately the child started taking off her clothes. And the child was like, "Oh, no, 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 don't take off your clothes. Why are you doing that?" He said, "Because you said you love me, and I want to show you I love you too." And the child was like, "What do you mean?" He said, "Because back home, da 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 says to me that the way to express love or to show love is this way." So the child's understanding of love is sexual molestation because that was what was used on this child. So it's more of a trigger. The word love triggers, and the child chose fawning, like falling to it, going along with it because she doesn't know better. Some people will just freeze or run or something like that, but the child's response to such traumatic abuse is fawning. She's just going with the flow because that is what she thinks is the best thing to do. So thank God for the teacher, like, oh no, and began to teach this child, because this child is quite very young in her 11, 12 years. She might not really have that ability to sit down and have introspection and understand what her feelings are saying to her. So how do I shut myself? Do I shut myself out? That's another question you have to ask yourself. We are really good at shutting ourselves out, shutting our emotions. I don't want to feel that. I don't want to feel the anger. I don't want to feel the fear. I'm just going to put up a facade. Hmm. We are doing more harm to ourselves than we can ever imagine. Putting up a facade is killing yourself. It's just like when someone has a very necrotic wound. Instead of going to the doctor for treatment, the person just covers the wound with a gauze or with a cloth and just pretend like, oh, nothing is wrong with me, I'm getting better. But the wound is rotting inside. And then you pretend that you don't see the wound. So some of us, we shut ourselves out. We don't want to feel the emotions. We don't want to feel the pain. We don't want to cry the cry because it's going to make me look weak. Tears in itself is strength because it helps you to let the emotions out. So all this maturism we try to express, like, oh, we're so... There's something someone said. He said, independence in itself is good, but hyper independence is an evidence of trauma. So we try to act like we can do all of this. We're just literally being our own selves enemies. We're not supposed to shut ourselves out, because when you shut yourself out, you're not being friendly to yourself. And the only way we can walk towards healing is by being friendly to ourselves. If we are not friendly to ourselves, we cannot walk through this journey of healing quite very well. So first, what are my triggers? What are really triggering me? How do I react to this? What are these emotions saying to me? What are they trying to communicate to me? Am I being friendly with these emotions? Am I being friendly with myself? Am I giving myself that space to understand what is really happening? Or am I shutting myself out? How well do I know myself? How well do I know what that triggers me? How well do I know how to tell those triggers it's okay? We are no longer in that situation. I think and I believe that one of the most important things a trauma healing individual need to do is always endeavor to be in the now. You are a human being. Intentionally bring yourself to the present. Do not allow the brain to take you to the past. The continual flashback. It's more like we are living in our past. Intentionally bring yourself to the present and tell yourself, I am here now, and what I am seeing or what I am experiencing is not what happened in the past, so long as we're no longer in that danger zone. So, my emotions, you have to work in alignment with the present. It's not an easy journey because you're going to have so many emotions and so many feelings going on inside of you as do you want to tear yourself into shreds. That's okay. Give yourself time, because the brain in itself is not even understanding why you're not trying to react, because it's giving you an information based on the past experience and you're doing nothing about it. So it's really difficult to put yourself together and do the right thing. But let us remember, it's a process. Gradually, as we are consistent in doing this, even when we fall, we just rise up, consistent in doing this, the brain begins to adjust and we begin to enjoy life in its fullest, because our brain is no longer giving us perceptions and stories and experiences based from the past knowledge of what is stored up, but based on the truth of the now and of the present. So these are what I would really love us to look into and to act with. Understanding ourselves. We've taken the responsibility of our healing away from the hands of our abusers. Now it is for us to understand ourselves, jot down our findings, and begin to work on it a step at a time. If you can afford a therapist, I will strongly advise you have a therapist, because they are more like a third party, an observer watching you, understanding you, even when you cannot understand yourself or you don't like the things we do that we don't even know, that we're doing. That's what we call the blind spot. They can observe and they can talk to you. And most importantly, they are trained to understand all of this and help us walk in this journey. If you have a trusted friend, open up to your trusted friend. And believe in me, God is always there to heal us. You can pray to God, read your Bible, and ask Him to help you. And one of the best ways He can help you is to send the right kind of people your way who's going to be a strong mechanism for your healing process. Until I come your way next time, stay beautifully broken.